Good afternoon, good evening. Thank you all so much for joining us today. For those of you in Israel, you continue to be in our tefillot, and we so appreciate that you are able to join us, and we hope that we have a quiet hour ahead without any sirens and a quiet night for all of you. My name is Aliza Abrams Konig, and I am the Director of Student Leadership at the Yeshiva University Rabbi Jonathan Sacks-Herenstein Center for Values and Leadership. We are honored today to be hosting Shira Lankin Sheps for a stop on what has become her virtual book tour for As Nashir. As Nashir is a growing series of Jewish texts and creative works shaped by women's voices, rooted in Torah and written from within lived Jewish experience. The latest book in the collection is the beautiful As Nashir Haggadah, On the Path to Redemption. Shira is a writer, editor, workshop facilitator, and a clinically trained therapist. She's also a friend. She founded and published the Layers Project magazine, an online magazine that explored the challenges and triumphs of the lives of Jewish women. She is also the author of a number of essays and articles in a variety of Jewish newspapers and magazines. She earned her BA in English Literature at Stern College for Women and a Master's of Social Work from the Silberman School of Social Work at Hunter College. She now lives in Modi'in with her family. She is currently the Executive Director and founder of the Shvili Center and publisher of the Layers Press. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Shira. Shira, you wear many different hats. Can you tell us about them and a little bit about yourself as we begin this conversation?
I'm a social worker by training, and I chose, even though I was clinically trained, to go into community work as opposed to clinical work. And I started my work on the Layers Project magazine, which was a magazine that started 9 years ago, maybe now, and ran for about 8 years. And it's where I interviewed Jewish women and we talked about what I like to call the challenges and triumphs of their lives. And really, what I did was I interviewed and photographed Jewish women, including Aliza, which is where we met, I think.
We just sort of knew each other before, but
Yeah, but that's
officially,
where we
yes.
like really connected. And we talked about all types of stigmatized topics, taboo topics, health, mental health, fertility, abuse, cancer, what have you. Really interesting topics. And we told a lot of personal stories. And the goal of that was to tell the world that, hey, your life doesn't have to be insta perfect. It was a time before very kind of confessional, memoir-esque type of social media writing. It was a time where you kind of just posted pictures of like the most beautiful, like your kids in like pretty cute little outfits and like little bow ties and put like a nice filter on it, and that was social media. And we were part of a movement and definitely helped shape how the Jewish community talked about real stuff in the public space. And I took a sabbatical. After my book Layers was published, I took a bit of a sabbatical. And then when October 7th happened, I got back to work. Someone called me up and said, Shira, it's time. You have no business sitting on your tuchus at home waiting for rockets. You have to get back to work. And so I launched the Shvili Center, which is a place for Jewish women's stories, spirituality, and well-being. And primarily what we do is recreate anthologies of writing, Torah, Tefillah, psychologically aware, what Shani Tarragan likes to call Torah Tanefesh, uh, projects and books that center around women's experiences, primarily here in Israel. And we started with Az Nashir, We Will Sing Again, which came out September 2024. And it was a series of trinot, piyutim, tefillot that were written by women here in Israel, born from experiences of the war. You know, our liturgy is so vast and so rich, but there were those of us who would walk around and say, Ein milim, like we had no words for what we were experiencing and the suffering that we were experiencing. And so I went in search of those who did have the language, as Rabbanit Ann Gordon, one of my co-editors, as she likes to say, masters of creative expression, teachers and scholars and academics and writers and poets and therapists and artists and people of all types and stripes who really had something to say, community leaders who had something to say. And we wrote tefillot and trinot for things that the liturgy just doesn't cover. For example, let's say you go to the mikveh and your husband is away at war and you want a tefillah for what you say when you go home and the home is empty. We had tefillot at the time for the hostages, for when you bury a child, when you bury a spouse in the war. I can't tell you how many times that was used. I have a friend who walked into a shiva house of a widow who had just lost her husband in Lebanon. She was clutching a Nashir, she was clutching the book and rocking back and forth because this was new. This was all new, and it was translated into Hebrew and English. So we're, depending on what your language of prayer is, because you can be an English speaker and still want to pray in Hebrew or vice versa. Um, we really wanted to be as accessible as possible. And also it had artwork, tremendous, beautiful, beautiful artwork, expressive artwork that really kind of elevated the pages, also born from women living in Israel. And, you know, then we it was like a movement here, and we had events of Erev Shira and Erev Tefillah and art galleries and cultural events and writing workshops and Tefillah writing workshops and Torah writing workshops and Torah inspired writing workshops, just to be clear. And in the spring last year, we created Az Nashir, Between Silence and Song, which is a book of tefillot and trinot for the yoms, Yom HaShoah, Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaAtzmaut. And I'm the co-editor of these projects alongside Rachel Sharansky Danziger and Rabbanit Ann Gordon, and I run and publish the Shvili Center. I'm like the little engine that goes behind the projects. And my background is in therapy, but I'm using it to kind of filter everything that I'm doing, everything that I'm touching. I spend a lot of time writing on social media, so you may have seen my writing there, trying to portray what life is really like here in Israel. And at the end of the day, I'm just trying to build community, platforms, books, workshops, events, and now this,
Yeah.
Haggadah.
Thanks. So tell us what made you decide to go from the Yoms to the next project being this beautiful Haggadah.
It's a really good question. I think probably I always knew that there was going to be a Haggadah. Um, the idea for Az Nashir happened right after our first Iranian attack here in Israel. It had been like the week before Pesach or a couple of days before Seder. And it was that particular night where we thought the world was ending and they told us 8 hours in advance. And then we saw like Star Wars Kilo, like where we saw like all these like drones and missiles, like 8 hours flying on the way to Israel. And we're like, oh, we're gonna die tonight. Like people were texting each other like, it's been real, or I love you, and I don't know what's going to happen. And I think it was the only time during this war that I was genuinely afraid for my life. And it was supposed to be 2 o'clock, I think, that the attack happened, and
Yeah.
I fell asleep. I don't know how, but I fell asleep. And I woke up at 2 o'clock to the scariest noise I'd ever heard in my life. And I went into that bomb shelter, and I thought that when I walked out of that bomb shelter, that the world that as I knew it would be gone. This was the first time we didn't know what would be. This was like the ultimate boogeyman. Um, and when even in the bomb shelter, we had found out that 99% of what had been thrown at us had been caught by the Iron Dome. We like, couldn't believe it. We like could, mamash, like I had never, I had, it was ki'ilu like Kriyat Yamsuf. Like I had never experienced a miracle like that in my lifetime. I had never seen any. I mean, I walked out and the world was exactly the same, untouched. It was unbelievable. I couldn't. And so a couple days later, when Seder happened and my father started singing, Kadesh Orchatz Karpas Yachatz, I was sobbing, like tears flowing down my eyes because I had felt so transformed, so changed, like my whole perspective on the Seder and the Exodus story and revealed miracle and divine intervention. It was just completely altered into like a whole other timeline. And I spent all Pesach thinking about it. Obviously, I couldn't shake it out of my head. And on Shvi Shel Pesach, on the seventh day, I woke up in the morning thinking about Miriam Hanaviyah, and I was thinking about Kriyat Yamsuf, and I was thinking about the women and how Chazal say that It was through the merit of the women of their generation that Yetziat Mitzrayim happened. And why? Because the women were prepared. They were prepared. They brought their instruments, and Miriam began singing her song. She had language for the moment, a moment of honestly of trauma. And she moved that moment of trauma into a movement of transcendence. And I kept thinking, what does that mean? Like, how does one become prepared for even such a thing? And then, Chazal go on to say that it will be the same hands that the final redemption will happen through, the same as the ones in Yetziat Mitzrayim. Now, a lot of people say, it's reincarnation, and we could talk about that. I could talk about that ad nauseum, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. But basically, what they mean to say is that it'll be through the merit of the women. And so the question that I asked myself that morning was, what can we do, the women of our generation, to ensure that we're the generation, the women of the generation that bring the Mashiach, that bring that final redemption? And so I called up Anne and Rachel, who I had been in a writing workshop with for 5 years. And I had said, I have this idea. What do you think? And weirdly, they both were like, yeah, let's do it. Erica, I'm sorry that I have waylaid some of their writing for Safaria. I have I'm always like, we got to get back to the books. We got to get back to the books. Don't worry. I'm on your team, Erica. We're going to finish those books. Because we're in a writing workshop, the three of us together. I have my own books to finish. But we joined forces, and we decided that what we needed to do is find language, find words. And that's what we did. We found the people who found it and created a movement out of that.
Beautiful. And my understanding is you brought together 70 female scholars, writers, and artists to create this project. It's really a magnificent number.
Yes, for this Haggadah,
Yeah.
I think there are different numbers for different Haggadah, for different projects, but for this particular Haggadah, there were over 70 contributors. That's a lot of women.
That's amazing.
It's a lot of managing, workshopping and editing, a lot of translating. An extraordinary amount of work went into this project. Extraordinary amount of work. For this particular one, we did in partnership with Matan in Yerushalayim, which was a tremendous privilege. I've been a student at Matan. Torah learning doesn't end in Stern, ladies. It doesn't. You got to keep learning your whole life long. And so when I meet Aliyah and I moved to Yerushalayim, I enrolled, and I've been studying there for 8 years, as long as I've been here. And so I like to think of Matan as like my spiritual home, where my teachers teach. And it was a tremendous privilege to partner with Matan to create this anthology. So the Torah essays and the Divrei Torah were from Matan teachers and fellows, Eshkolot fellows. You guys may know about Eshkolot. And then the tchinot, the personal prayers and the insights, and some of the essays were written by the Shvili community, so people who had participated in Az Nashir in the past.
Beautiful. Thank you. So looking at the Az Nashir Haggadah, which includes traditional texts alongside personal tefillot, as you said, the tchinot, psychology and reflections on trauma and resilience, how did you navigate honoring tradition while making space for the emotional realities of today, which are very different?
So the Haggadah itself is a layered text, and we don't touch it, we don't disrupt it, we just stepped into it. The same as every other Haggadah has commentary. We have commentary. The thing that's unique about it is who is commenting and what they have to say. The Haggadah has become like a roadmap for how to live in these like complicated, dark moments, or these footsteps before this redemption period. And like every Seder since the beginning of the mitzvah, we are required to see ourselves as if we left Mitzrayim. And today that has a totally new meaning. We don't have to use our imagination anymore. We don't have to put on like costumes and, throw a matzah over the shoulder and it's cute to do with the kids, but when we get to the essence of the mitzvah, what we're trying to do, it's not that hard to see ourselves in the context of suffering. questioning what freedom really means. Freedom and safety are two things that go hand in hand. And we live in a world of upheaval, just like the generation of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Their world was completely in upheaval. We also, at the same time, are living revealed miracles and divine intervention. And I think that the Haggadah itself was created to reconcile and support each generation through their moments of change. This is just our version of that.
That's beautiful. So the broader as Nashir project often speaks about finding voices in difficult times, like you just highlighted. What does singing specifically or storytelling look like when people are still in the middle of pain or uncertainty? Like, are there tefillot in your Haggadah that are either really resonating right now as you're experiencing sirens throughout your days, or that you thought we wouldn't be here again necessarily, and here we are when you started writing as Nashir?
Yes. I'll start with your first point.
Sure.
Singing in this context seems like the result of redemption. But let's just take a step back to that moment at the sea, right? So you have Miriam Hanaviah, and she's standing on the shore, and all the people are standing around her, panting, because they had just run for their lives through something completely unnatural, one could argue, and then watched as their masters were wiped out by the sea. And they're just literally standing there trying to catch their breath. And somebody, Miriam, raises her hand and starts to sing. There's noise, there's voice, there's sound, there's frequency coming out of her. There's meaning making coming out of her. I think typically when we look at the scene out of context. Can you hear me, Phil?
Yeah, we lost you for a second. We heard out of context, and then we
now it's okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Just for a moment, when you look at it, especially when we're younger, we look at it. It seems like a celebration. They're having a party. It seems like they totally get what happened, and they're really, really ecstatic, and they celebrate, and that's the happy ending.
Tambourines, like that's all you remember as a child, right? Tambourines.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that, or you remember the end of the Prince of Egypt movie?
Sure.
Shira Lankin Sheps, and they're all happy and they walk through and all's good. But that's not really what happens, is it? Because they've just ran for their lives. There's fire, there's clouds, there's smoke, there's sea and brine and overwhelm and fear, and they don't know what just happened. But they sing anyway. So song, I think we think of it sometimes as like the happy ending. It's the bow. It's the pretty song at the end of the movie. But that's not what song is. That's totally not what Hallel is. It's the act of resistance inside. It's an act of resilience. So the first national song is sung in a state of instability. It's not sung in a state of everything is good, and singing is not necessarily polished or complete or emotionally resolved. It's an experience of choosing voice over silence, or giving language to something that hasn't been finished, or refusing to let pain be the final word. And the experience of it, singing in a group, is connection, it's vibration, frequency. It's something tangible. You can't see it, but you can feel it, that binds people together. It's empathy. It's embodied empathy. Because what does music give us the ability to do, or good writing give us the ability to do? It gives us the ability to feel other people's feelings. It gives us the ability to borrow from their lived experience and embody it somatically. we say in Judaism, we want Bnei Israel to be ish echad belev echad. Well, how do we think that's accomplished? It's an avenue, it's a channel into that merged experience of shared reality. In my opinion, I think that it's like the most surefire way to get everybody on the same page or to share an emotional state. And so right now, we're not on the other side of the sea with clarity. We're not. We're somewhere in the really uncomfortable bits of the middle of the story. And there's grief for a lot of things. There's fear and disorientation. And we're doing a lot of waiting, right? We're doing a lot of waiting. So to me, singing looks like singing, writing when you don't have answers, not necessarily even to find the answers, but just to mark the experience of the process. Praying when you're not sure what you believe or what is open to you or what opportunities through your prayer can be open to you. It's speaking even when your voice shakes, maybe telling the story as it is and not as you wish it to be. And to me, I don't know. I think that singing in this moment is not about harmony. It's about honesty.
Mhm. Do you see, I don't know if you're even at the point where you can plan your Seder, but do you see yourself planning your Seder differently this year in terms of the way you're approaching things, since we're living this journey right now, or you're living this journey in Israel?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. Um, my father usually leads the Seder every year. And this year I asked him, I said, Abba, you know, I've been preparing this Haggadah all year. Like, can I lead the Seder? And he made a lot of jokes like, oh, it's too bad that we don't have 2 nights of Seder anymore because the Haggadah is so long that we're not going to get through all the commentary. And he said, oh, and then he was going to be one of those new things where, we start the Haggadah, on Seder night and we're going to have to go all the way to the next year just in order to finish it. Um, that being said, yes, because something about this year feels radically different. And I'm going to speak about it later, but something about this year feels radically different. And there's something less intellectualized about this year, even, and I know the irony of saying that because this Haggadah is very intellectual. There's tremendous scholarship in here. So if you think about it, there's like layers of experience. So you can have kind of like this hierarchical experience of like there's intellectual stimulation. But right now, especially in Israel, but I know also in the States, there's a tremendous amount of physicality to the experience of slavery and freedom and safety and belonging and nationhood. And it's about symbols and identity and language and acceptance, rejection, community. It's complex. It's so complex and it feels so visceral to me in a new way, maybe and I'm thinking about the kids way more than maybe I ever have. And I know that the point of the Seder is Haggadah Levincha, and I'll address that in a minute, but I'm thinking about the fact that we have kids who are now experiencing the world through a totally new lens than the world that we grew up in, right? If you're a kid in Teaneck or the city or wherever you live, Boca, I don't know, you are coming face to face with a new reality of anti-Semitism that your parents did not have growing up. They didn't have it. My kids are living in bomb shelter. And this is not the first time, it's not the second time, it's not the third time. It's a habitual part of their life. And yet, the timing, the context of this war is so profound, so like mind-bending, truly, that I feel desperate actually to find the language to put their experience in context through the mode of the Seder. It's a tremendous opportunity, actually, to mine the text, to remind them, hey, this is where we were always going to be. This may be also where we always have been, but this is not where the story ends. So I'm actually getting emotional even thinking about it because I have a lot of work to do. I feel like I have a lot of work to do to understand how do we, and the Haggadah is genius. Pedagogically, it's so genius. It puts everything already in context. It already gives you, yes, we use symbols, we use fragments of stories, we bring in different characters, we have songs, we have all these different modalities of engagement, we have questions. But this year we're kind of, all of us, not just our kids, but all of us we're all the four sons this year. We're all focused on the details, and we're all maybe trying to take some distance to protect ourselves, and we're all simple and just wanting things to just to be safe and okay. And also there's a lot that we don't know how to ask, or we don't know how to phrase, or we don't know what to do. And so the Haggadah is remarkable in the sense that it's been primed to be the map in which every generation of Jews can go to. The timing of it this year is really something else. I'll give you that.
Perhaps intentional, perhaps not. No, but I will
Always
say,
intentional, not by us, but God
yeah.
always has a plan.
Exactly. I will say, what you're saying really resonates because every day now, I mean, we've had police presence at our shuls in America for a while now, but I live on a corner between three shuls. And
Mm,
we have police outside of our building all the time because they're going between different shuls. And my kids' school has increased their police presence, right? And it really is hard to have that conversation with your kids. I get emotional every time I walk past the police cars on Shabbos morning, and I'm like, oh God, this is our reality now. But it's so true what you're saying, like this experience of how are we answering these questions? How are we even having the ability to think about the questions, right? It's a totally different experience.
yeah, we need to wake up. And this moment, I think, is waking us up. And
Yeah.
then the Seder comes at the perfect time to be like, I got you. This
Yeah.
is how you do it. And
Exactly.
it's really quite astounding.
So I'll ask you one more question before we open the teaching component for you of this program. For those of us who were fortunate to have ordered the As Nashir Haggadah, and for those of you who have not yet, the link is in the chat, so we highly encourage you to order it. What kind of conversation or transformation are you hoping it sparks around the Seder table?
Yeah, this is such a good question. I um I really hope that it gives another layer of infusing your Seder with empathy and understanding. Because the Seder already asks us to enter a story of suffering and redemption. We do it every year. We know all the songs. We know them by heart. I mean, I must have been I know I was. I was very annoying when we were making the Haggadah because we would get to a page and we'd be like laying out the text and doing the typography, and the whole time we'd be like, like I couldn't, like it's so ingrained in the experience of the Seder. And usually we move through it relatively quickly. I mean, sometimes by rote, in an intellectual headspace. But I think all of a sudden we have a deeper understanding of what it means to live with fear and uncertainty. And most importantly, in my perspective, a longing for a better world, and a better world that can be brought through redemption, however you define it. Because it's not just about the story of the Jew or as in the individual, even though it is. It's the emotional reality of being a human inside of it. And especially in a time when so much of our community is fragmented, we really need to Like the question, I did a writing workshop with a group of women from Karmegat last week, 2 weeks ago. One of my 17 book events that were moved to Zoom or canceled. And we were talking about, I asked them to write a tefillah or like a bracha at the end. What is it when we say Lashana Haba Yerushalayim? That forward thinking, the Haggadah ends in a forward thinking way. Like, what is it that they were hoping for? What is it that they wish for? And every single woman said the same thing. I was totally floored. They said they wrote a prayer for unity. I think in Israel, we feel it so intensely, this fragmented state of being and how dangerous it is to the soul of our people. And so when we don't just tell the story, but we feel it, and we feel it in a communal setting, we make space for each other inside of it. So that's part one. What I also really hope for is bringing in voices that speak from lived experience. For the last how many years, Erica, you can tell us, I had two Haggadot in front of me every year. Your Haggadah, Erica, and Nechama Leibovich's Haggadah. Because it was really important to me to learn from or to bring in material and sources and insights from the way that I saw the world or from teachers that I wanted to learn from. That was really important to me. And here in this Haggadah, like as those two very outstanding, eternal, beautiful contributions to our community, women's scholarship is not ornamental. It's not an empty seat on a panel. It's essential. It brings emotional language and relational insight and embodied spirituality. And these are very deeply rooted voices in Torah, but they're also very attentive to inner life and what it means to move through all of these moments. What I love about it is that I keep calling it like it's a handheld Beit Midrash because there's so many voices in it. It's an anthology. And so there's so many voices of extraordinary teachers in here. Israeli voices, contemporary voices. And so you're bringing like a depth of learning, like a chavrusa, chabura experience into the Seder itself with women that you might choose to learn from on a regular basis anyway. And so when you're sitting at the table you're not alone with the text. You're in conversation with a whole community of thinkers and teachers. And that is extraordinary. And listen, at the end of the day, Hiddur Mitzvah is a big thing. And she is beautiful. Um, there's extraordinary artwork in here. I'll show you some a bit, but they're just huge paintings and colors and vibrancy and photographs, and it feels like Israel. It feels like Jews. It feels like it's very feminine, very female, whatever that means. I don't know. It's beautiful. It's art. It's extraordinary. It's like what do we call it? It's another form of midrash. I love that. And so if the Seder becomes a more empathic, more thoughtful, more beautiful space, then I think we've set it up to do, we've done what we've set out to do.
That's beautiful. I always share over every year the concept that the language by the four sons, where it says at pitachlo, right? When for the she'eno yodei lishol, that the language is actually in the feminine, that it's the gentleness of a mother who can open up the child to ask the questions. So we're so excited now, first of all, to receive our Haggadah B'ezrat Hashem, but for you to take the next 15, 20 minutes to teach us some of these voices, some of the Torah from these 70 contributors, these beautiful women who contributed to your Haggadah. And then we'll wrap up at the end. So please, Shira.
Thank you so much. This is my favorite thing to talk about these days. I'm going to show you bits of the Haggadah. So am I able to share screen, Aliza?
You can in 1 second. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm not going to yet, but
okay. When you're ready.
But when I'm ready, it's good to know. So, I want to come back to this question of Why does the Seder feel different this year? We are coming carrying something very immediate, very, very raw. And I think no matter where you are in the world, it's there. It's there. Whether it's because you're distressed about Israel, or you're distressed about the place where you're living, or it's a combination of all those things, or distressed about everything that's happening in the world, the upheaval, the breaking of systems that we're seeing that is very confusing and very distressing. And um, we've been living like this for a really long time, actually, even since before COVID, but maybe even longer. Just living in a world in upheaval. So, like I said before, it doesn't feel like imagination. Doesn't it's a shift from experiencing the text as memory to lived experience. And so, the Seder begins with an invitation. Hold on, let me bring this forward for you. Before I get into it, I just want to show you something because it's really beautiful. I'm going to give you like a little tour so you can see it. Can you see? Can you see my? Hold on.
Yes, we can see. If you're able to make a teeny bit bigger, maybe.
Is that better?
Yes, perfect. Thank you. That's
Okay, amazing. Don't judge me for all of my tabs. I'm in the middle of logistics and shipping, and these are Excel spreadsheets. It's not my strong suit, but they're there. So first off, I'll just say this. What this Haggadah is seeking to do, in I think an unconscious way, is to address the fact that though Shemot brings a tremendous amount of story, I wouldn't say a tremendous amount, a bit of story about the women of Shemot and the women, the Nashim Tzadkaniot, it doesn't really flesh out their lived experience. Not really. And the Haggadah goes even further, and they're basically not there in the text. Not really. And so what I think we've done, I think each teacher unconsciously, what they've been trying to do is to put the women from Shemot back into the story of the Haggadah. And so they talk a lot about the inspiration of the women of Shemot and how they have continued to persist. Their legacy, the myths, their legends have continued to persist. The archetypes have shaped our reality today. And it does a really interesting thing where many teachers, including Dr. Yosefa Fogel-Rubel, she has a really interesting thing where she compares the women of Shemot to the women, some of the tremendous female leaders that we have here in Israel who have led us through this war, through their spirituality, through their faith, through their activism. And so that it really brings the stories to life in a really interesting way. So you can see, which just to clarify, which I do think is important because there's a tremendous amount of text in this book. We do have icons that help explain how to use it, how to delineate each kind of content. So it's a pretty smooth flow. What I love about this Haggadah is it really is attuned to the women's experience of Pesach prep. I'll just read to you really quickly a bit of Ruti Eastman. She's an incredible writer. She lives in Neve Daniel. She wrote this beautiful tchina called Pesach Preparation. She says, I need that just mates, and the people that I love are not carbonot. Keep me from yelling about breakfast cereal and keyholes and cookies in bedroom cupboards. Help me make the hunt for chametz and cleaning an adventure a game between me and you. Remind me that my goal is not to become a modern-day slave, but to revel in releasing the unnecessary and focusing on what matters. My family, my community, my God and his Torah. I love this. I mean, you'll continue to read it, but we even have here artwork by the amazing Avital Sharansky, who happens to be our co-editor's mother, which is she has a couple of beautiful pieces in this anthology. Here Rachel Weinstein, who's in Beit Shemesh, she writes about breadcrumbs. I long to be free, looking deep inside, excavating bits of tragedy. I pray that I may remove each morsel, each bit, and nullify them from my conscience. playing hide and seek between wrapped pieces of leaven. I pretend I don't know where they are, even though I have placed each one. Tomorrow I will take these breadcrumbs of my affliction, carefully tucked into their last vestige of secrecy. I will relinquish them and throw them in a communal flame that fuels hope higher and higher. And then Chaya Bina Katz, who is the executive director of Matan, created this beautiful piece that really, it's Bidikat Chametz, the search, the light, and the darkness. So as you can see, step by step through every process, these women's voices step forward to kind of like give language to what we already experience. And then there's all this tremendous Torah. So we have these essays and pull quotes. And then here on the bottom, we have prompts where we kind of bring everything in context to kind of give reflection points and inspiration for conversation at the Seder. I happen to love this piece of art. I think it's extraordinary, and I thought it was very sweet to put it next to Erev Tavshilin, because if Pesach isn't about eggs, what's it about? I don't know. It's all about eggs. Um, okay, so let me just skip ahead a little bit. Oh, there's just one. Sorry, one of my favorites. This feeling. I think they do a wonderful job of capturing feeling. So Brianna Grogan, she lives in Hashmonaim, and actually we got stuck in a bomb shelter the other day together, and it was very nice to be together. Um, so she's capturing the moment right after candlelighting. You know this feeling right when you're about to make Seder, right after candlelighting. She says, the house swells with warmth, laughter, footsteps, and voices flow through the rooms. Embraces brim with anticipation. The air is alive with reunion. Seder plates gleam on the table, such a tapestry of memories. Many pasts and the present braided together as one. We gather around, candles unlit, and with the strike of a match, we are lifted out of the ordinary, suspended in time and space, from chaos of preparation to the stillness of this moment. Everything quiets. The house exhales at last. You know that feeling. But to see it canonized in this way, to feel the liturgy of it, to be able to recite it, whether in Hebrew or English, I just found it very moving. Very, very moving. Okay, so let's skip ahead a bit so you can see all the beautiful artwork here. Okay. Halachmania. So the Seder begins with an invitation, right? We're coming back to this question of what differentiates this year from all the other years, the Seder from all other Sedarim. Kol dechvin yetei veichol, whoever is hungry, come and eat. It's like a strange place to begin, because this is not a moment of abundance. It's not a moment of stability. Like matzah is not stability. We are narratively, for sure, but also maybe even practically, depending on the generation and the time. We're either like still in Egypt or just barely out. And yet the first move of the Haggadah is like outward. We're not even looking inward yet, we're looking outward. And usually we read it as kind of like ritual hospitality. But this year, I think it lands differently. This year, it feels like the hunger is not theoretical hunger, but it's hunger for safety, hunger for clarity, for reassurance, for things that make sense. And then suddenly the invitation feels more radical. Like it's not, oh, when everything is okay, so you open your doors. It's even when things are uncertain, make space at your table. What are you making space for? We tend to contract when we're unsafe. We close, we protect, we narrow, we shrink. But the Haggadah begins by saying the beginning of redemption is expansion, even in suffering. And I think it's less of a formality this year and more, I think, of a lifeline. It's, in social work school, they teach us on the first day of social work school, they say, meet your client where they're at. And I feel like the Seder and the Haggadah meets us where we're at this year very profoundly. What are you hungry for? What stability are you looking for? When the Haggadah goes on and it talks about Ma'aror, Hold on. Sorry, I gotta skip. By the way, look how beautiful this is. This is Dainu. That's stunning. This is Ricky Rose Horowitz, Megan Matan Torah, and this beautiful piece. It's called Shefa by an artist in Svat. Her name is Yael Flat Tower. I just thought it was extraordinary and so appropriate for Dainu. It's really inspiring. I love that. Um, okay, so when we talk about Maror, usually bitterness is symbolic. My brother-in-law, he's got this shtick where he grates a whole thing of maror, like a big horseradish, and he eats it. And he does this thing where he like stomps his foot, and then his face gets red, and you could like Kilu like see the steam coming out of his ears. And like every year, it's like a joke. It's like funny. It's a joke. Um, Symbolic. We taste it. We say something about suffering. We move on. But I just don't think we can move on so quickly this year. I almost feel like Mara is a moment where we're going to linger a little longer than we usually do because the bitterness is not abstract. People are carrying grief and fear and anger and exhaustion, no matter where you live in the world. And so the question becomes like, what is the Seder asking us to do with those feelings? And, I'll just read this little piece that I wrote. So these are one of our insights. This is a psychological insight. Actually, I wrote all the psychological insights in this Haggadah. Rachel Sharansky Danziger, she wrote all the story crafting insights, and Anne Gordon wrote all the pedagogical, the educational insights. And so I'll just give you a glimpse of what this means to me. On the night of freedom, we teach toward bitterness on purpose. In a ritual that celebrates liberation, the act of tasting maror brings us back into contact with ancient suffering, and one might think that to be fully free, one must leave pain behind. The Seder teaches the opposite. True freedom is the capacity to remember bitterness without being overtaken by it. Liberation is not about erasing the past, nor about pretending we were never harmed. Rather, it's about telling our story with dignity, honesty, clarity. But we go beyond telling the story of suffering. We taste it. Maror tugs on an ancient memory, stored not in language, but in the nervous system. The body remembers pain. And in eating, we step briefly into the experience of our ancestors. Maror is controlled, momentary return, not to be consumed by pain, but to witness it and carry it wisely. Our Seder tables include bitterness, but also sweetness, nourishment, and hope. The presence of Maror invites compassion for our people, for our ancestors, and for ourselves. And I think that this year, I can honestly say this year, that Maror may be one of the places where we need to linger the longest. Because when we don't give language to what we're carrying, it doesn't disappear, it isolates us. And when we do give it language, even in small contained ways through symbolism or through somatic experiences, it becomes something that we can hold or process or be seen by other people. And I think that many of the prayers or reflections or Torah of this Haggadah, what they're trying to do is not to intensify pain, but to name it so that we can actually be present and come showing up with what we have, what we're actually carrying, because then only then can we have a true Seder, the way that it's intended, in my opinion, my humble opinion. So Mara this year is not about remembering bitterness. It's about calling what we carry and feeling our feelings. The central mitzvah of the Seder, and I'll end with this, is Haggadah Levincha, telling the story. But the Haggadah doesn't present it as a monologue. It's questions and multiple voices and different kinds of children's and interruptions. And like I said before, I'm asking this question of how do we teach our children through this? How do we guide them through this? In the original Az Nashir, I wrote actually a tefillah for what you say when you are trying to soothe yourself and soothe your child at the same time in the bomb shelter. So it felt very natural for me to take the next step and to write this one for right after the Mani Shana, and right when we're beginning this process of the four sons, or the four children, however you like to think of them. So I'll just share with you to end this blessing that I wrote for all the children. Creator of the world, grant us, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, educators of all types, the right words to teach these children, to convey our complicated past and bright future, to transmit our legacy without our trauma, to bring them into the fold of our people, leaving no one left on the outside. Grant us the patience for every kind of question this Seder night and every day, the answers for every intention and curiosity. Show us how to engage them, draw them in, and help them find their place among us. Bless these children and their teachers. Grant them peaceful lives of depth, joyful chapters of sweetness, holy hours, knowing the transcendence of your Torah and the merit of seeing the final redemption unfold before our eyes. Thank you so much for having me. It was such a gift and such a treat to come back to my alma mater and to bring this beautiful Haggadah and to be able to share it. Thank you to Aliza for thinking of me in my in my moment of I'm literally like in the bomb shelter coordinating logistics for Haggadah deliveries. I am happy to say that we are almost sold out, that we sold out the couple thousand copies that we printed in 2 weeks. And there are still about 40 left in the States. And so if you go right now to shvilibooks.com, you can order it and it will come to you before Pesach. Bli neder.
It's amazing. Thank you, Shira. That was really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And especially ending with that tefillah for children. And you should know that doing this program with you actually inspired our next program, which I do want to share in the chat. I jokingly had written that I'm not so great at doing teen programming online. And then my sister, who's on the call, said, you actually can do something for kids. There's this person, Digital Dove. So we're going to promote that here, that if anybody wants to sign their kids up on Wednesday morning or Wednesday afternoon Israel time, we're actually going to do a online trivia game for kids to give parents a little bit of a break maybe. And
that's awesome.
And for kids to have a little fun online. Shira, this was so beautiful and so inspiring. Please, on behalf of all of us, thank all of your contributors for really reshaping how we're viewing our Pesach Seder this year. It was really it really is a beautiful book, and I really can't wait to open mine. I think we had a second copy, one for crumbs and one just to read. To get dirty.
I saw another Haggadah. They were printing it and then they were like shrink wrapping it. It was like all over Instagram, and I was like, "Whoa, that's a different madrega." Maybe next year. I didn't get there yet.
That's maybe the more Haredi one, like no homemade should come in the mail. I don't know.
I keep being like, we don't need books. We don't need them. It's okay.
Totally. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Again, we wish everybody a Chag Kasher v'Sameach, safe, quiet, peaceful for everybody all around the world. Shira, thank you for all you're doing for the Jewish people.
We made it without a siren.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You're a mazel.
It should be a quiet night for all of you. Thank you all so much. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.